So welcome everybody out today to visit with Matt and Bryant as we discuss the top 10. I was going to call it massive games, but that seemed too vague. So I think I decided on sprawling games.
Sprawling games.
So this is
Okay,
games
all
that
right.
sprawl across the table, the games you needed a large table to try and play.
Yeah.
But before we get started, I have something very important I have to show you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because I got a 3D printer.
Right, yeah.
And
I know
I've now
that.
made the most important object of my life. So I have to make sure it shows up on camera here.
There you go.
I made a bust of myself.
That's awesome.
It's for work. I'm gonna make my boss put it on her desk.
No, now you need to have a board game competition and give that out as the prize.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, the real awards,
Yeah.
You have a good name for it. So
yeah, I do. It's a real treasure.
yeah, there you go.
Okay. And I can just keep printing more and more. I did have to paint it, obviously.
It looks good though. Yeah, you did a good job.
Okay, anyways, yes. So I think it's your turn to go first this week.
Then we all know what the last game is going to be then.
Yeah. Well, you know what mine's going to be already.
And it's not going to be on my list because I've never played it. So
yeah.
This list was actually difficult for me. Probably more difficult than most of the other ones that we put together. I play a lot of big games and sprawling games, and it was tough to kind of pick the ones I wanted on the list, if that makes sense. Because I like a lot of them. Yeah.
Very similar for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I ended up with a short list of about like 25 games or something, and all of them like easily could have made the list. I'm looking at like my 11 through 23, and they're all good games that I would play.
did you rank them by what was your ranking based on?
I used kind of a hybrid-y system. It was like, the biggest, most sprawlingest games I gave more weight to, but I also said, but I like this one more than this one.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So it's like I kind of used big games, but then also the big tiebreakers were the ones I liked the most. So.
Okay. I think I mostly focused on the sprawlingness, but that being similar, I would have ranked it by preference.
Yeah. Sounds good. So hopefully we got 20 big, good games. I don't know if we'll have a lot of crossover on this list, but we'll see, right?
We'll see. Yeah, I think there's a couple. I'm pretty sure you're going to have at least.
Yeah,
one.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
I might know what that one is then. Okay, well I'll start it off then. My number 10 on this list is Miss Thea. So I've talked about this game before. It's in the Miss Thea universe. It's a game by Tabula Games, and it's this massive area control game. You got dudes on a map, you got floating islands. The islands move around this gigantic game board, and not only that, but you also have a bunch of player boards as well that you're building out so that like you have all of your player abilities on there as well. And then there's an event board over to the side. So you end up with in a 4-player game, you're looking at 6 different boards on the table, and it sprawls out because everybody has like 20 miniatures under their control as well. So it's a massive game, competitive, and really nice area control game that doesn't have as much combat as it looks like it would in the beginning, which I kind of like in area control games where it's more posturing instead of combat.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And again, because you've mentioned this one a couple times.
Yep.
And it sounds like it's a game I'd really, really enjoy that I still haven't played.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where the artwork has just sucked me right into the world, and I just really enjoy that world. And I granted do not get this game to the table that much because it is a bigger game. It is a long time to set up, and it takes a while to play. So,
which is generally means I'll like it because actually I'm a sprawling game guy.
There you go.
Now the my 10. I don't think really is the number 10, but I had other games that were like tied with, like some of my games are kind of represent a category in a way.
That's fair. So that's fair.
Some games I left off just because it's basically this game, right? So
yeah, it's hard to not do that, right? Because then you can end up with just a whole bunch of campaign games or just a whole bunch of area control on your list, and it's not the best representation of everything, right?
So I put Dead of Winter.
Okay.
Dead of Winter, it has a lot of table space in the sense that you have your main board where your colony is. You have separate little boards for all of the sections of town that you guys can go to. You all have your own hands. You have a couple of decks, and there's like 1,000 little standees.
Yeah. There's a ton of survivors and
Yes,
zombies,
you have all
right?
the survivors and all the zombies, little tokens. So a lot of the table space is actually for, and this isn't stuff that you can just set aside and put away. Like in a lot of games, there's a lot of big games where a lot of it you're not going to use for that game.
Yeah.
But in Dead of Winter, everything might come into play at some point, right?
Mm.
You have to like leave it all there. And so I think a lot of the table space in Dead of Winter is just all your spare things that you're not using but might later.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. Do you when you play, do you play cooperative or do you play competitive?
I don't think I've ever played it competitive.
No, yeah, I think a lot of people that I've talked to that have played that game typically side on just the cooperative version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you play cooperatively, I think you have to play on the hardcore difficulty for the scenarios and that, which does make it a little bit harder. But I think having a betrayer in there would also make it pretty hard. So
Well, I've played, okay, if I've played Betrayer, but I've never been to the point where we've actually voted somebody out of the colony or anything.
oh, there you go. Yeah, I've only ever played it on the cooperative setting, so
Yeah.
it's a game I haven't played in quite a while, but I do understand the sprawling nature of that game.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Moving on to my number 9. My number 9 is another game that I think I've mentioned a few times. Another game that has the nice universe. Game that has an expansion on Kickstarter right now. It is Tidal Blades: Heroes of the Reef.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tidal Blades, worker placement game where you are competing against other people, trying to become the next Tidal Blades and winning this champions tournament to prove that you're ready to go fight monsters in the fold. Fun theme, really colorful game, and the thing that puts it on my list for me, the sprawling nature of it, is the islands that you go to. Normally in a worker placement game, you'll put out one board and it has a bunch of different worker placement areas on it. In this one, it's a bunch of islands, and you have 3 different main islands that only have 3 action spaces each, but they end up covering a good section of your table. Then you have your champions board up at the top. You have the fold where you're fighting monsters, the Citadel of Time where you're recovering your stuff, and then every character has a giant player board with their different dials for their stats. And then you're completing challenges, so you're tucking cards under things, and it's great fun. It's a game that I've played now a handful of times, and I think I've lost almost every time, but I keep coming back because I do enjoy the gameplay, and I really enjoy that world. So that's
I think
my
that's
number
actually
9.
a wonderful statement for a game, is when you can lose a lot and still really have fun.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of islands, my number 9, I put Archipelago. And I gotta be honest, it's been a long time since I've played Archipelago. It's kind of, if I remember correctly, it's like everyone has a different secret win condition. And it's an exploration game. So I think a lot of exploration games by nature are going to be very sprawling.
Yeah.
Because you're often, laying tiles out as you're moving around and exploring. And so it's like that. So you have your tiles and you place them down. And once you place it down, you move into that area. And then there's resources you can collect. There's tribal villages you can go to. You can hire workers. So it's not only the big map and your own play area that you have to worry about. There's kind of like weirdly shaped pieces like the market and everything like that. I think there's like round. So it's like not like square pieces. You can tuck them nice and tight together. It's kind of just oddly shaped components as well. So it does, and it can really sprawl depending how much you explore, and everything can just keep going. And I feel like I lost just because I kept exploring instead of trying to win.
Yeah, sometimes it's just fun to get that exploration element and just keep going, right? And yeah, I find myself doing that every now and then in the game where it's like, yeah, I'm probably going to lose, but I really just want to find out more of what's in this deck or something.
Exploring is its own type of victory.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. No, that's cool. It's a game I haven't played, so I don't have much to comment about it, but yeah. My number 8 is a campaign-based game. Part of the reason why I put this one in as in the massive game category, the sprawling game category, is the number of boxes that I have of stuff for this game. This game has a lot of different miniatures. It's a game by, I think it's called Mythic Games, and they're well known for their big miniature games. It's a game called Solomon Kane. In this game, you play as Virtues, and you are directing Solomon Kane on his journey against the forces of evil. So nobody actually plays as the main character in this game. You instead play as these heavenly bodies that assist. And when you actually put your virtue on the map, your miniature is about this tall kind of thing. So it's a good sized miniature that just plunks down into the middle, and it looks really awesome. While you're playing through the game too, you're pulling out different map tiles and that. And yeah, every expansion that I have for the game adds in another giant box with miniatures in it and more books to read through. It's hundreds of pages of story content, tons of different map tiles, tons of different miniatures. It just sprawls out through the table. And it's a neat cooperative game too. You roll some dice, and then those dice you use to activate your abilities, but you always feel like you don't have enough dice. And so you offset by you having not that great of a turn, but giving your dice to somebody else so that they can have a better turn, because that's just what your team needs to do right now. And yeah, so that's my number 8 Solomon game.
You know, I'm going to be honest. I don't even know if I've ever heard of that game, but it sounds very fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fun story-based game. So it's you can sit down, and if you have a few hours to actually play through an entire book, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Is you basically take out a module and you're playing that module. So it runs you through the story. It's just that every module is a unique story, so it comes with unique map tiles, unique miniatures, unique cards to drive the story through as well. So yeah, it's
thematically
fun.
the opposite of the others.
There you go.
Where you're actually trying to corrupt everybody.
Yep.
All right. My number 8 is Terraforming Mars. So I don't know if you've played that one before.
Oh yeah.
So Terraforming Mars is you all represent a different corporation, and so you're going to have your own little play area with your core. You know, it's asymmetrical. You can play symmetrical or asymmetrical, but why would you play symmetrical? So you get your corporation with its unique abilities. So you already have a fairly large board to begin with, like not monstrous, but you have a pretty big board to begin with. And you also have your own little play thing where you keep track of your resource income and energy income and everything like that. But as you're playing the game, you're drafting cards to put onto Mars, and you're just building this massive tableau of cards in front of you as well. And so you have basically 3 major areas. You have the board, you have your economy card, and then you have this massive tableau, which I would say rivals the 7 Wonders card tableau that you get from that game, right? So it can get pretty space intensive pretty quick.
Yep, for sure. Actually, with your new 3D printer, that game is one that really leads itself to a better player board.
And if you're interested, there is a website that specifically has 3D elements to these games, and Terraform Mars is one of them, where you have models you already have. You don't have to build them. You just can print them off. Gloomhaven has entire 3D boards and everything.
Oh, crazy. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, Terraforming Mars, we played that quite a bit. That was a little earlier on in my board gaming career, if you want to call it that. We played quite a bit of Terraforming Mars. I think the game gets a lot better when you do the drafting aspect of the cards.
Yeah, I've never done the not drafting aspect.
When we were learning the game, we did without drafting, and it can get a little bit too random, I found. But yeah, once you get into it, and then the different corporations, I normally like to give a few corporations out to people and then let them choose which one they want to use.
I think that's usually what we do, draw 2, pick 1 kind of a thing.
Yeah, and there are definitely some that feel a little bit stronger than others, but
sure.
That's always the case. Unfortunately,
asymmetrical, it's really hard to balance perfectly.
Yeah, especially when it's competitive asymmetrical. That does become an issue sometimes, where you have a different player power than the other person, and it makes you really strong in some scenarios, right? It's still very situational though in the game. You kind of have to play to your strengths, right?
You do, yeah.
But cool. So my number 7 then is going to be one of I think probably one of my more you'd call card games than not, is Everdell, actually. So in Everdell, you are building a village in front of you, and it's a big kind of engine building style of game, because you're really building more and more actions in front of you that you can then use to continue to expand your village. It is a worker placement game by nature, but as you start to build things, you'll start to be able to use cards for free out of your hand, which will then give you bonus abilities in like your harvest phase and your other phases in the game. Now, the reason that I put Everdell in as the big game, part of it is definitely the tree. If you've ever played a game of Everdell, you have the I can't remember what's called.
I've seen it,
the
but
Ever Tree or something.
Yeah.
It's this massive cardboard cutout tree that is where you place all of your next season's workers on it. So as you move to the next season, you take your workers off of the tree. It also is where you hold the events, kind of thing. The other reason is the number of expansions to this game. There's a bunch of different expansions, and each time they added an expansion, they added a new board to the game, and they all fit together really nicely. So it becomes this big, nice looking thing on the table. And then yeah, your village itself starts to become this grid of, I think, like 15 cards or something like that you can build into your village.
Cool. That's a game I've actually really wanted to try. I like the look of it, and the theme looks really interesting. And I think I actually put on my prettiest games list, I think, even though I'd never played it, but I have seen it, so I think it counts.
Yeah, it's I've put my gameplay of Everdell on hold because I'm waiting for the collector's edition to come in.
Oh, cool.
I ordered the big box Kickstarter, so I'll have every expansion and be able to just dive right into it once it arrives.
All right. Well, my number 7, I had to put a tie for this one for reasons I will explain. And I put Descent and Imperial Assault, Star Wars Imperial Assault.
Okay.
They're essentially the same mechanics, same size, same structure, but it's one of those games where you have scenario based and you lay out a tile map out on the table. So the size of the game in terms of table space will vary depending on the scenario. So it can be quite large or small, just depending what's going on. But again, you have your own, you're gonna have your own character cards and hands and everything like that. So, and you have a fair bit of minis going on, basically a miniatures based game. So it can take up a bit of table space. The reason I put both of them, I put Descent because it's the most famous, I think, of the two. Like most, I think a lot of people, more people have probably played Descent than Imperial Assault. But Imperial Assault, I actually preferred. And the reason is because I got to the point in Descent, we played it enough. The turn order is really the major difference, where in Descent, all the players go first and then the Overlord goes. But once the players really know what they're doing, we were finding there were no monsters left. By the time the Overlord got a turn, there was just nobody left for him to control, unless they were really far back on the map, right?
Yeah.
So the players just got good enough that they would just wipe everything out, unless they had really bad rolls or something. Imperial Assault kind of balanced that out. So basically they have one player goes and then one set of units goes for the bad guy,
Okay.
So it's kind of more even.
We actually recently played Descent, and we played using the app-assisted cooperative mode.
Yeah.
And that mode actually follows the Imperial Assault play pattern, where one character goes and then
and
then
it could be two things. It could be we played Descent wrong for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I think the turn order might have just been fixed with Imperial Assault, and they probably just retconned it.
It could be, yeah, that could be it as well. Yeah, but definitely the turn or the game of Descent that we played was done that way, and it was a lot of fun.
Besides that, it's basically the same game, right? So
there you go. Yeah. Fantasy versus sci-fi, right?
Yeah. Or space opera. I hesitate to call Star Wars sci-fi, but
fair enough. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're on to number 6 then. So my number 6 is a darker themed game, very thematic game, and super fun to play. Very interesting combat mechanic in this game. It is a game called Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. So Tainted Grail, massive production from Awaken Realms. Really cool looking miniatures, really dark kind of warped humans, if you will. The game starts out, and it actually starts out kind of small, where you have kind of your one card in the middle of the board with your characters on it, and there's one card on each side, and you have to start expanding out, and there's a lot of world exploration to it. And as you go to these other places, the thing that makes this a large game for me, or a sprawling game for me, is really the storyline and the exploration. You get this giant book, and every location has an entry in the book, and when you go to those locations, you have to do different decision making while you're there to expand the story, figure out where you have to go, and then you're running across the world of Avalon, like you're running through and trying to discover your hidden objectives and the different places that you can go. And then you get to a place and you get stopped, and you have to turn around and come back, and the entire time you're kind of racing the clock, because every turn your menhir statues are losing their light, and that's the only thing that's letting you see the board that you're running through. So when those menhirs go out, the darkness creeps in, and now you can't see any of the places that you're trying to get to anymore, where you just flip over the cards, or you take the cards off the board, kind of thing. So it's a fun game. The massive part to me is the storyline. This game is 19 chapters and probably takes 40 hours to play, something like that. So it's a lot of fun, very challenging. And then the combat mechanic, actually, to speak to that, is playing cards in chains. You can play as many cards as you can on your turn, essentially, but you have to be able to activate them in chains. And it's a really neat mechanic that I know at the very beginning of the game was super, super fun. It did start to taper off towards the end for me, but the theme really pulls this game through for me. It's dark themed Knights of the Round Table. So,
and you definitely had it on one of your lists before. Was it?
It would be thematic games. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be right at the top of that one because it is one of my favorite themes. So
yeah, it sounds good. Now my number 6 is, it's hard to mention sprawling games without bringing up this one, which is Duel of Ages 2, and especially if you have the master set. Now you do have, it's a sandboxy game, so you have a lot of control over how much, like the map size. The map could be anything from one tile to literally you could cover your entire Thanksgiving dinner size table with just the map if you wanted to. Would not recommend it. Usually like 2 or 3 tiles, but there's a box full of them. And there's just so many decks. Like you have all these characters you can play, and I didn't count. There's just so many decks and so many tokens and so many different pieces going on. You need quite a large table to play that game.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a mess. It's a beautiful mess of a game, but it's massive. And the master set, the expansion is larger than the base game. I think what happened was I think they just found the game was too large to release in its entirety. So it's not so much as an expansion as the rest of the game.
The rest of the game, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't played that one, but I know it's been on a couple of your lists now, right?
And I'm sure you'll hate it. I don't think.
No, there you go.
I don't think you'll like it.
It's one of those love-hate games, eh?
Yeah, people love it or hate it.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay, cool. All right, so moving on to number 5. Number 5 is a game I know you like. I'm not sure if it's going to be on your list or not because it's a rather new game that I introduced to you.
Oh yeah,
it's Uprising: Curse of the Last Emperor. I've been really kind of smitten by this game. I think I got to play it more. It's just it's one of my newer games. Really enjoy it. Cooperative 4X game. So you're exploring, you're exploiting the land. You're expanding your army and you're exterminating the bad guys. It's interesting because all of the players work in cooperation to take out the big bad guys, and there's 2 different bad guy armies, and it's really just a race of getting as many points as you can because the players all need to have more points than both of the bad guy factions, or else you lose. If only one player falls behind either of those factions, the game is lost. So it's a interesting take on it, and I was kind of looking to get into the 4X genre, and this one was a cooperative game, which kind of helped me into it, if that makes sense. So it's on my list because it's a massive board, massive event board. Everybody's got their armies in that, and it looks really cool once you put all of the acrylic figures on the board. Great looking game, fun game to play. Uprising: Curse of the Last Emperor.
And
number 5.
I have 2 comments on that one because one of the things is it has a better cooperative element than any other cooperative game that I've played, and that is you can't just run ahead as a player. You can't just run ahead and be the team. You have to make sure the other players are also doing well because you still lose. You could do as well as you want, but if one person loses, you lose. Yep. So you're really forced to make sure, like, okay, I'm doing really well, so now I have to commit these resources to help Jim because he's not doing as well. And you had to do that for me, I think, when we were playing.
Well, and it's interesting because if you are doing really well and you have all of your guys out on the map, you're able to defeat the enemies, but that means you gain the points. And sometimes you actually have to leave the weaker enemies for your allies to kill so that they can get the points off the weaker enemies.
Yeah.
And then you just have to go take on the heavier duty guys, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is the exploration. It wasn't as easy as I thought it would be at the very beginning. I don't even know if we got there's still like half the tiles we never even explored.
Oh yeah.
Right? So like exploring is so it's not an easy walk in the park. You're really taking a risk every time you send your armies out to discover a new territory.
Yeah, because
That
every
was
time you flip
interesting
it,
as
you don't
well.
know what's on the other side. So
Yeah. So it's like, and it's just there's so much fighting going on. Is basically I had to hold down my, 4 or 5 tiles that I had.
yeah.
So, all right, cool. So my number 5 is the game that I think every time I've played table space was a legitimate problem. And I mentioned in one of our other episodes is Shadows of Brimstone. And so this is one where it's like an Old West, but like Lovecraftian Old West, where there's
Right, that's what it
mutations
was.
and
Yeah.
demons and all that sort of thing. And so you're like a cowboy or a sheriff or, a prospector type of character or a priest. And you're going down into these mines looking for these usually crystals that can mutate you.
Of
Fighting
course.
all these weird demonic hordes and finding portals into other worlds and that sort of thing. And but it's like it's a map that's not a preset map. So a lot of these games that I've talked about, like Descent, Imperial Assault, and stuff like that, you're creating a map, but the map is set once you've laid it out. But this is one where you're exploring and you're pulling out tiles and placing them as you're exploring. And you don't know what tiles are coming up. So sometimes you'll be like, well, we can't go east because that leads off the table. Sorry.
Bless you.
I can edit that out. Okay, so anyways. So sometimes you'll be going down a corridor and it's like, well, do I go north or east? But north goes off the edge of the table. So you're like, well, I guess we're going east, right?
Yeah.
So that's like legitimately every time we've played, we have to consider the table space when we consider where we want to go.
Yeah, it's the worst when you have to like move this entire map that you've been building for the last 2 hours a few inches just so you can place it on the next tile.
Well, and on top of that, you still have like a lot of these games, your character cards and tons of decks of cards.
Of course, yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, it's another game I haven't played. The theme sounds really interesting, actually.
It's a really good theme. The theme is really strong. The mechanics are It's a game I think that could do well with a really good like remastering.
Oh yeah,
like keep the theme, keep the general idea, just maybe work on the combat, and the AI.
Yeah, either that or do more games in the same theme. It sounds like a wicked theme.
Well, they have several versions of it actually already.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. If we're moving on then to number 4. My number 4 on the list is another large cooperative game. Probably one of the most chaotic games that I think I've ever played. It's called Mechs versus Minions. Game by Riot Games, the guys who make League of Legends. It's using the League of Legends IP. And this game is you are a Yordle who is controlling a mech suit, and you are programming that mech suit using a programming board in front of you. So every turn you're going to put 1 or 2 different items or actions onto your board, and that is either move forward, turn, or shoot something. And as you move through this campaign, you are running minions over or spinning and killing minions or shooting minions with things, or the minions are hitting you and damaging your control, and then your control modules just get completely out of whack and desynced and it goes crazy. And good luck ever trying to actually control your character 3/4 of the way through the game. You're probably going to run into a wall, then slide on some tar, kill 5 people, and shoot your friend. So it's a fun game, really chaotic. Go into it with the right mindset, and you'll have a ton of fun enjoying Mechs versus Minions. All the mechs come pre-painted. The production value kind of off the charts. I think they knocked it out of the park with their first game, and it's been one of my favorites ever since. So that's my number 4, Mechs versus Minions.
And I would say that's on my short list, but I've never actually run into table space problems with it, so I guess that's why I didn't.
Oh yeah, okay, all right.
I do have very large tables at my house. All right.
Yeah, it's always right on the edge for me. It's almost falling off the table every time we play it. So
yeah, I have actually 2 like 8-foot tables.
Oh, there you go.
They're like 5 and then 8 when you put the leaves in. All right. Anyway, so my number 4, it's another one like my last one, Shadows of Brimstone. This was another one where you're exploring a map that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you often have to change direction based on the table. But it's even worse. And this is Betrayal at House on the Hill, and especially if you have the expansion, I think it's called the Widow's Walk.
Yep.
So this is one where you're exploring this mansion, So again, you're going through doors and you're just heading whatever direction, but you have to put tiles down as you're exploring. So again, you got to watch the edges of the table because you can't run off of it. And it's another one where you have to keep moving the map so you make room.
Yep.
But what makes this even more of a complication than Shadows of Brimstone is you have, with the expansion, 4 house levels. So you have 3 without the expansion. You have your basement, your main floor, and your upper floor, and then you're adding an additional floor with the expansion. And so you have 4 of these segments that you got to be watching all the edges where they're running into. Yeah. So and then of course I find there's not as much side, like there are a few decks of cards, but like the side stuff doesn't take up as much room. But
Yeah, that's right. There's
the map of the house can definitely sprawl.
There's very little as far as like the character sheets and that is concerned too, right? You have
so
your one.
It's minimal in
one
terms of
card.
the off-board stuff, but quite a large board.
Yeah, it's a good fun game as well. I've always told people you have to be in the right mindset when you play Betrayal because some of the haunts are pretty unbalanced. Sometimes you can have a very small house and get into a haunt and it's just over too quick.
And it depends what the haunt is. Some haunts you want a big house, some you want a small house. Yeah.
And sometimes you get that really big house and you are just stuck in there forever. And the bad guys are just going to win because you can't get out.
But if you're in that sucked into hell one, you definitely want a big map.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
I have been in the Abyss map, that one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where it was the first haunt that we revealed, and
really?
it was over in 2 rounds, and it was.
I had a similar experience, but I think the game lasted us 20 minutes. But luckily, I was the bad guy, so I was okay.
Oh, you won, yeah.
Yeah, I won.
Cool, yeah, it was a fun game. It's been one of my top, like one of my favorite games.
It's a great gateway
for a long time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who aren't really into board games, a lot of them still enjoy this one.
Yeah, and I played the heck out of that game, so I really don't have much drive to bring it to the table anymore, just because I've played every one of the base haunts and most of the expansion haunts. It was one of the first board games that I ever bought.
Have you tried the D&D version?
I have not tried Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, Betrayal at Baldur's Gate. It actually it improves the mechanic. I would say some of the mechanics are improved, but I also felt like it was too overpowered, at least when I played, in terms of the players. The players felt like they got too powerful too quickly. But maybe that was just a coin, could have been.
Could be coincidence. Could be that balancing issue that they love to have in that game. Yeah. That's cool. Betrayal. That one did not make my short list. I just part of me didn't think about it. I think, and then part of me is like, well, that box could fit inside of one of my 7 Solomon Kane boxes, so it's probably a smaller game.
Well, the box itself packs pretty tightly.
It does. Yeah. Oh, that's cool though. Okay, my number 3 as we move up the list, Sleeping Gods got onto my list again. I think it's a really great game. Has a wonderful world again, good exploration to it, nice sprawling book, let's say, of different quests that you can be on. And the thing that really sprawls in this game is your adventure cards. You start to pick up more and more cards and quests and stuff like that. And my table is filled with all of the different stuff that is on our boat as we're traveling around. And you have to activate these adventure cards by using a resource called Command in the game. And sometimes it's very hard to actually find the card that you want to activate because you have so many different options by end game. It's like, okay, I know I need to have a shield, but I have one shield here, or I have one shield here, but that's also split with a different ability. Oh, or do I want to use this shield over here that's split with a third ability? So it's like all of your cards have multiple options as well. So the sprawl to me is just the amount of options that you have in the game. And it's a super fun game. Sleeping Gods.
Excellent. Which again has been on a few of your lists.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have discussed that one. Now my number 3 is Gloomhaven. Just Gloomhaven has a lot going on. Now it is a game where you're not always using you're never using all of the game. You're probably at a time using like 15% of the game because you're picking out a certain amount of tiles for the map, a certain amount of monsters that you need. And then your own character stuff. I just find though that we play on a pretty large table. It's always, even though we're only using a part of the game, it's just always covered in stuff, right? Because you got all the monster stats, you got your own player, you got your own card, you got your own little sheet, your character sheet. You've got your attack deck, you've got your items, you got the store deck, the road events, the city events, the map itself, all the tokens that you need, the conditions tokens and all that stuff. It covers a large table. I think even if you're playing a small map, all the accessories, this is one where the accessories take up a lot of the space.
Yeah, they definitely
Ton
do.
of accessories you're using, and you're only ever using a fraction of them at one time.
But you will have all of them out, even if you're only using a fraction of them, because when you move to the next scenario, you have to find all the next scenario's pieces.
I don't think to be honest, I don't know if I've ever really played 2 in a row.
Oh yeah, no, when the girlfriend and I went through that campaign, we would set it up on a weekend and we would just keep it set up for the entire weekend. It's like, okay, we play through a mission and then we tear down that mission, set up the next one and just keep going kind of thing.
This is one that might be I might be interested in 3D printing, and I think it might even be marketable because Gloomhaven has such a big fan base. Everything is printable. Like you can get even the map tiles or big full 3D, with like walls and doors and all sorts of like, altars.
That'd be nuts.
Yeah.
That would take up like so much room.
Every type of monster has, and these, like a lot of it's free. Like you can get the monsters, all the monsters, the summons, everything.
I thought I heard a rumor that they were actually doing a miniatures pack for Frosthaven. I don't know if they're doing one for Gloomhaven or not, but I thought that they were actually going to make like a licensed
I imagine for Frosthaven. I can't imagine them at this point even bothering with Gloomhaven because it's already available. Yeah. Anybody with access to a 3D printer already has.
Yeah, I can just make their own. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it probably is for Frosthaven. I know I'm following the Kickstarter because I'm waiting for my copy of Frosthaven to come in. Yeah. So.
But if you want anything printed for that one, let me know.
All right, I will. All
right.
Or maybe you could print something for my number 2 game, which is Gloomhaven. So there's our first crossover for the list. Is my number 2, Gloomhaven. All the reasons you said. Massive game, super fun. Love the combat style with the top of one card, the bottom of the other card. I think most people who would find our list would probably have played Gloomhaven by now. So if not, you should. It's a good game.
Yeah, it was. It was number 1 on BGG for a long time. I don't know if it still is. I think it was, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah. It was definitely number 1 for a while. There's been a few different hotness things creeping up in there. I know Sleeping Gods got really high for a while as well, which deservedly so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 2, it's another sandboxy one. I think I've mentioned in one of the other lists. So again, you could control the size of it based on how big you want your map to be. But this is Mage Knight. But it's another one where the map can get really big, but it's not even really the map that's taking up so much of the space as all the accessories, because you have a big chart keeping track of all the players' XP experience. You have a big decks of like layouts of different units that are available for hire, different spells you can buy, different talents you can buy, artifacts deck, wounds deck, all the monster tokens. It's a massive spread even without the map itself, and then you have the map which you explore and just continues to spread. So huge, massive game.
Yeah, it's I mentioned it the last time. I haven't played that game. It's I've heard mixed about it, right? I've heard good, I've heard bad. So
yeah, I think it's another love-hate thing, but I think I'd mentioned last time the lockdown or quarantine games. It's one of the only probably the only game that I would willingly play solo. For reasons other than just learning how to play the game. It's a great adventure game, and again, it's a sandbox. You can say, well, you can set your own victory condition if you want. There's scenarios in the book, but I never use them. I'm just like, okay, for this game, we're going to say whoever kills the first dragon wins, or whoever conquers the green city wins, or whatever. Or
there you go.
Yeah, and
run around, get done, Oz.
Up. Sorry,
conquer the green city. Get done, Oz.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and all the cities are unique. They'll have their own unique features and everything. You take over keeps and wizards' towers, which will unlock different abilities. I think it's a blast, but yeah, it's not going to be for everyone. And it's not, I think balance might be another thing where it's not like, you can't go into it expecting a nice balanced game.
Yeah, I'd still probably give it a try if it was laid out on the table for me. Yeah. Okay, we're now down to the number 1 most sprawlingest best game ever in the world.
That you've played.
That I've played. So my number one is a big cooperative dice rolling dungeon crawler called Midara. Midara, I think, is even bigger than Gloomhaven when it comes to the amount of stuff you have to have on the table. You have your different miniatures, you have your different tiles that you play out. Every character has their own board, but this game really dives into that almost JRPG trope of every character has their defensive core, their accessories, their relics, their weapons, all of this different equipment, and those different pieces of equipment build out to a different character build. So you kind of get this RPG element into your character creation, but then you also have the dungeon crawl feel when you actually go to fight things on the map. It's a little bit crunchy or accounting based when you get to the dice rolling aspect itself, because not only are you taking the total dice number versus your opponent's defense, but then you're also adding on what symbols can work with your gear to give bonuses, subtract off their defense, and then do damage kind of thing. So there is a little bit of crunchiness when it comes to actually dealing the damage, but at its heart, it's a move your guy, attack something with a really cool looking weapon, roll some dice to see if you kill him. And yeah, I really enjoy it. Right now, it's just the girlfriend and I that are playing through a duo campaign, if you will, of this game. And it's this awesome world that you can dive into and has this massive storybook. And I love games like that. Like, we sometimes have to sit down after a play session and just read through 3 or 4 different pages of storyline, just because that's how the game is. It's narrative driven. So that's my number one sprawling game. I actually have play mats for all of the characters, and they will not in any way fit on my table. So I haven't been able to use them. So that's
well, interesting, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first mention of this game on any of the lists.
I wanna say it might have been on my theme list, but other than that, it's just it misses some of the marks for the other games. Yeah.
I mean, it may have been. This is the first time I remember hearing about it.
It's really hit the top of this list, I think, because of its size. Because of the fact that it doesn't fit on my table. Most things do fit on my table, but this one, I have the nice fancy player neoprene mats, and I can't use them. It's just too much to have on the table.
Well, that's very interesting. Now you're excused from not having my number one on your list, which you've already predicted, I feel, because if you've played this game, it kind of has to be on a massive game list, and that is Twilight Imperium 4, and in particular, if you have the Prophecy of Kings expansion, being that the expansion gives you up to 8 players. What that does, what that does, it makes the galaxy map even larger. Now, the galaxy map alone is huge, especially if you're doing the full size for an 8-player game, a 7 or 8-player game. You're already looking at a map that won't fit on a lot of normal tables. And then top of that giant galaxy map, you have a ridiculous number of side components. So first of all, each player has a massive play area, not just a little token area, a massive area, because you have your big card that tells you about your faction and all your ships descriptions. And then you got another card on the side where you keep your command tokens, and you have another card on the other side where you keep your money and stuff like that. And then you have your technology decks, and you have your mechs and your leaders card, and you have your dice, and you have all your huge fleets of units, your ships and infantry, and you have your reserve of tokens, and you have all these cards like your the strategy cards area, the points area. You've got the all the tokens for ships and infantry and money and all that. And I think I'm right. That's not even all of it. Oh yeah, all the exploration decks with the expansion. Because when you go on planets, there's different exploration decks you draw from.
Of course,
you basically have to play like when I play. If I were to do an 8-player game, I would have 2 tables put together side by side.
Wow,
and it would still be squished.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and it would probably take you what, like an hour and a half per player?
Well, I think the general estimate is an hour per player. If the players know what they're doing. It obviously slows down if somebody doesn't know what they're doing. You do have to watch. One of the biggest problems, you do have to be careful. It's not good for players that get analysis paralysis easily.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
There's
it's
probably
not a
lots,
game where you can
lots you
have
can
somebody
do,
like
right?
on their phone and then like at their turn, they start looking at the board and figure out what they're wanting to do. You need players who are going to be engaged, because otherwise it's going to take them 10 minutes to analyze the board every turn. You really need people that can really, they're going to be in the game.
Yeah.
But if you get the right people, it's my absolute favorite game.
There you go. And it's one that you still have to share with me.
Yeah. And one of the, actually, now that you've mentioned it, the opportunity has arisen.
Uh-oh.
If you're available on April 30th.
Ooh. We'll see. We'll see. That's
And to throw something on, making a custom fleet for it.
Ooh.
Well, I haven't
fancy.
got permission from the host if he's going to let me use a custom fleet yet. But I've been working on a fleet for the ghosts of Kraos.
Hey, as long as I can be the Empyreans, that's all I need.
And
So
I'll see if I have time. I can also make an Empyrean fleet then.
oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. Well,
All right.
that's the winner.
You have decreed, eh?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And then I think a lot of my honorable mentions you actually mentioned. So
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
if you got any more to add?
I like I said, like half of my board games probably fit on this list, so it was such a challenge for me
Yeah.
to go through this one.
Well, I think even some of mine, like Fortune and Glory, could fit here pretty easily. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think I looked back through some of my old lists, and Madara actually was a runner up to like 3 or 4 of them. So
Okay.
it
So
was
never
kind of
quite
right
made
there
it,
on
but
the
it was
cusp.
almost there. Yeah.
But you're right, I haven't mentioned it before. It's just like I was saying, this one tipped it because of how big Madara is. And I have 1/3 of Madara right now. There's 2 more acts that are coming that'll triple the size of my game. Yeah, as far as honorable mentions that I want to shout out, I guess I want to shout out Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Doesn't hit a lot of lists because it doesn't have the best of themes. It's really a card game at heart. But it sprawls. It sprawls like nothing. It's every character has their own deck of cards, and so every player who's playing has a deck of cards. And on your turn, it's very simple rules: is play, power, draw. You put a card down, and if it's an ongoing card, it stays in play. And just the number of ongoing cards that end up at the table, because you're playing with a deck for every player, and then you're playing with a deck for the villain, and you're playing with a deck for the environment as well. And if you play on the last expansion mode that came out, Oblivion, then you're actually playing with multiple environments, multiple villains, and it just expands to a stupid number of cards. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one would be my honorable mention for this one, just because it's one of my favorite games of all time. But it just doesn't feel as big as the other games most of the time.
You know what? And I now that I thought of one while you were talking to. I think Cthulhu Wars probably deserves a mention.
Yeah, I haven't played it.
These are so big.
Yeah, they look awesome. So I haven't played it, but I've seen a playthrough video of it, I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a fun one.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Well, thanks very much, Matt.
Yeah.
That is our recommendation for the best sprawling games. Which, sorry, can I add one more? I haven't played it, but I would have put it on this list if I've ever played it. Sia Legends of Adrift. That is a game I really want to try. I don't know anybody that owns it. One of these days, I'll just break down and buy it. But there
you go.
It definitely looks like a sprawling game. Now I'm done.
All right. Okay.
We'll end it here. So we'll talk to y'all later.
All righty.